sometimes it feels like it's a little bit of a dark world out there. And this is light. This is joy, at least to me. And I think to a lot of girls and women. And there's just so many incredible individuals in this book that deserve to have their story told.
We love this sport of women's soccer. We are in it every single day. Hey, Sandra, that's why we started A3, right? To talk about it. And although you do a lot of writing, we have someone here now joining us that has done even more. They wrote a book all about this. And we are so pleased now to be joined by Clelia Castro-Malaspina, who is the author of the new book, Girls with Goals, How Women's Soccer Took Over the World. Clelia, congratulations and welcome to A3.
Oh gosh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
We are excited to chat with you about this, and thank you for sending over a copy of this book. I've got it here in my hands.
Yay.
Flipping through it, reading it, looking even just at the images on the front. It is all encompassing of women's soccer, but it doesn't just start with 1999. But tell us about this book. Why did this come about? Why did you write this book?
Yeah, well, I'm a 90s kid, right? I grew up in the suburbs in New Jersey, and like soccer really had taken like a hold of the suburbs in that era. And I grew up playing. My dad's from Peru, my mom's from France, countries that like soccer super important to them. And then played in high school. My athletic career kind of peaked at 18, but I always like loved women's soccer, and kind of like this big defining moment for me was the summer of 1999 when I was 16. When the soccer team was like, soccer was like my whole personality, basically, when I was 16. And then I went with two friends to see the opening game at Giants Stadium. The US team played, and it was just like this thunder striking moment, right? Like I was a sports girl. I had heroes like Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, all like men. And this is the first time in my life, and many hundreds of thousands of girls, maybe millions at the time, the first time they had seen women in sports bras and ponytails, like as these strong, powerful, commercial, super popular athletes. It was like just an incredibly empowering moment, and probably one of the first times I felt my own power as a girl. Right. In that era, it wasn't as common as it was now. And so that feeling kind of stayed with me. And then I admired the US women's national team as a fan for years. And they've just so consistently been inspiring and achieving these new milestones over the years. And so, I worked in kids publishing for a long time, and I started writing my own books not too long ago. And when I was trying to think of something that I'd really love to write about, like this came to top of mind. And I thought, well, surely someone has written about this already. But then it turned out, like, even in the adult space, this is a young adult book, that no one had kind of looked at the entire history from the very beginning to now, when it's in this hugely successful moment. There are some very humble beginnings to the sport. And even I was surprised as a fan. I kind of thought women's soccer started in 99, but there's like 100 years before that with all these incredible, surprising, interesting moments and epic women. And it was such a pleasure to kind of research it and then put it all down on paper.
I'd love to hear more about the process of kind of getting this all together, because it's meant to be for this young adult audience.
Yes.
And so maybe it's written in a way in which they can absorb it for themselves. And what does that research look like for you, and how did it all come together, and getting so many of these different things into one place for this audience?
Yeah. So, it was a little bit daunting at first, because this is like a full spectrum history, right? It's not just like a lot of books that are out there have kind of looked at one corner of the history, like equal pay or maybe the 99 team, but this is end to end. So really just figuring out where to start. And luckily, there's been these amazing academics. I'm going to shout out Jean Williams. She's in England. She was really kind of like the first women's soccer academic, or the one who did the most. And she's the one who kind of uncovered these first games that happened in the 1880s. And she had to dig hard, right? She was looking through like church registers, journals, like ads in newspapers to find any mention of women playing football, because, women's history has so often been ignored, not written down, erased. So she had to dig hard, right? She wasn't alone. There were other academics who really dug and found this information, and not just in the UK, but now in Africa, in South America, in Asia, and they did the God's work, really. and I was able to kind of get all this information from across these generations. And find the kind of milestone moments that I think would be most meaningful to this audience. I have to say, it wasn't hard to put this all together. There was it was very clear, kind of the progression of women's soccer. There's kind of like 3 eras. The first was like, should women be allowed to play at all? So this was like the Victorian era England through to like, the 60s, the 70s. And then was, are they good enough? Should we respect them? Is it worth paying attention to these people? And that was the era that kind of like was like the 90s. And now it's, are they equal? And that's kind of the era we are in now. And the story really showed itself pretty easily. So I was lucky in that way. It wasn't too difficult to construct a narrative.
It feels like the last couple of years, just covering the sport so closely as we do here at Attacking Third, that it is off on this new incline that we are about to see, with so much more investment and teams and leagues launching. There's still so much more to go, but it feels like we are in the midst of a boom that is happening. And in 10 years, 15 years, we'll look back at this time in the 2020s when, okay, there is a lot of investment. There's $1 million transfers being done for these players, but you really looked at everything in the past. What is something that really stuck out to you that you learned in researching about women's soccer?
Well, first I want to say, like, because we're in such this boom moment, I think it's so all the more important to kind of look back and see how far women have come, right? To get to this glorious moment that's now also leaking down to other sports. And so for me, there was a lot of surprises in this. I think one of my biggest surprises was that women's soccer had its own a league of their own moment in England in World War I with soccer. So like all the men went off to war, and at the time the teams were constructed by the factories that men worked at. So once the factories were empty, they filled women in them to work like they did here during World War II. And then they made women's soccer teams out of them. And and they played for charity, not for money, because women aren't allowed to make money playing sports in that era. But like they were wildly popular. Like 50,000 people going to these games. This was in the 20s. And they got global coverage, stuff like this. The most famous team was called the Dick Kerr Ladies Squad, named after the Dick Kerr ammunition factory. They had an absolute goat in Lily Parr. She was this incredible player who played for 31 years and scored 1,000 goals. And she was just this huge character, and this team was just so beloved that by the time they still got to play after the war was over, but when the war was over, England's Football Association got upset because they were kind of drawing a bigger crowd than the men. And, it didn't feel appropriate to them anymore that these women were taking up this men's space. And so in England and in the UK and other countries, women were actually banned from playing soccer for 50 years. And as far as Brazil, it was actually illegal, like an on the books law, that it was illegal for women to play soccer. That's surprising.
I'm just listening to you rehash some of this stuff, and it's always these stark reminders. And even though I'm maybe someone in this space who's familiar with those histories, I'm thinking about it from the audience that this book is intended. And I think that's where my next question is going for you. You've had a lot of time to kind of, cultivate all of this research and look into some of the work that's been done around the sport already and get it into this book for a young audience. So what are some of the key takeaways, or what are some of your hopes that you want this young audience to get out of this book?
Yeah, well, first of all, like, I wrote this book for girls who are like me and probably like you guys, right? They're just fans of the sport, players, fans of the game. Like, this would have been a Bible for me. I would have loved this book growing up. So just to like whet their appetite, that's one goal of this book. But others, you know, it is like women face so many obstacles in the sport over years and years and years. And every single time women, their love of the game won through, they kept pushing for more and more. And every single time they were victorious, every time, and continue to be. And I feel like it's such an uplifting story. And, you know, in a time when it's pretty complicated to be a woman, like, it's good to look at something that feels good and where women are the victors, and they pushed and like got almost everything they wanted and are continuing to go for it. It is so inspiring. And I just, you know, sometimes it feels like it's a little bit of a dark world out there, and this is light. This is joy, at least to me, and I think to a lot of girls and women. And there's just so many incredible individuals in this book that deserve to have their story told.
Give us one name that's in this book that you're like, young girls have to know this.
Yes. Oh my God. You need to hear about my girl, Nettie Honeyball. Okay.
What a name. I love it.
I will say, not a real name, but the reason why it wasn't a real name, because it was like late 1890s. She was this Victorian sassafras who was the first person ever to be like, we are starting up a football club for ladies. It's the British Ladies Football Club in London. She put out an ad like, if men can play, women can play too. Let's show them. And she got this group of women, these middle-class working women, to totally defy society's expectations. This is Victorian England. People are wearing corsets, bustling skirts. Women are expected to stay at home, have babies. And here she is like, let's put on those bloomers, unleash the tatas, and get playing. And so, and she was super smart. She got this like Tottenham Hotspur player to be their coach. She got this like woman in the aristocracy to be president of their club to like kind of lend legitimacy to them. And then she was a great hype woman. She like was in like full outfit, her bloomers and everything, and was in the press, in the newspaper at the time. We say press widely, it was just the newspaper. And then and had these like very fun interviews with these journalists who were like totally questioning what she was doing, but she was defending it, and it was so amazing. So
what's her name again? Say it again.
Nettie Honeyball. Just like completely epic person. She has this great full color image in the book. She truly is a favorite of mine.
I love it. Go check out Nettie Honeyball in the book Girls with Goals. It's out now. Clelia, thanks so much for doing this and chatting with us about this. What's next for the book? Are you doing any press around it? What's going on?
Yeah, so doing a bunch of press, but what I'm most excited about is this Sunday, if you're based in the Seattle area or the Pacific Northwest, I will be officially launching the book at Rough and Tumble Pub, which is a women's sports bar in Seattle, very beloved. We're going to be having the owner, Jen Barnes, is going to be moderating discussion between me and 4 generations of women's soccer players. It's going to be so cool. I'm also going to be at Watch Me in Long Beach over the summer, working out with a bar of their own. And any other women's soccer bar will take me. I'm available. So, but this Sunday, that event is May 6th, Sunday, 3 p.m. And hope to see anyone there.
There you go. You heard it here first. Go check her out. Say hi to her. Maybe she'll sign a book for you. I don't know. You get a book, you'll get all the things. Congratulations. This is very cool and definitely educational for so many the young fans that are excited to read this book. Clelia, thank you.
Thank you guys, and keep doing awesome work.